That is the worst call that you could imagine coming in.
The way it comes out on dispatch is just a non-injury collision, Longfellow Elementary.
So when I got the phone call that we had a serious incident involving one of our school buses with kids and a bus driver, it was all hands on deck.
Start heading towards it. Okay, well now there's an injury. Dispatch tells you that, and there's not a ton of details. Now there's an injury where the bus driver is bleeding from the neck. Okay, that changes things.
My name is Nancy Lenhart, and I'm the widow of Richard Lenhart, who was the Pasco school bus driver who was killed on September 24th, 2021, while protecting the 35 children on his school bus. The loss has turned my world upside down, turned our whole family's life upside down.
My name is Sabrina Malott, and I am Richard Lenhart's daughter. On that day, I not only held my mother as she said goodbye to my dad, I had to call my children and tell them that Grandpa was gone.
I want to take the energies that I would use on being angry and hate, and the time that I would spend on this guy that hurt him. I'm trying to use it for positive things. My first mission was making the Richard Lenhart law, no trespassing on school buses, and we accomplished that. We started in July of last year, and in March 26, Governor Inslee signed that bill into law.
I was honored to be a part of leading the effort to go ahead and make this incident that occurred here into law, to where we can work on building better relationships across the state to protect children, bus drivers, and even our school safety across the state of Washington. If we can work on any of the school safety aspects, outreach to people to educate them and understanding what buses do, how they can perform in a safe environment, and protect the school bus drivers themselves, this saves lives and it's effective.
I'm hoping that we can get this national and take it to all the states, because right now, Washington is now only the 9th state out of 50. And my brain keeps going, what's wrong with that picture?
The return on investment for the money that we're going to spend, I think, is tenfold in the avenues where we can look at the data and say that we're going to prevent these from happening. You're never going to prevent every incident because you don't know the mindset of an individual who's going to be walking near a bus. But if the training is up to par and we can see it from the staff, meaning the school bus drivers and the people around it, and even the parents who are more aware of what's going on in school bus operations, I think that goes a long way to preventing this from ever happening again.
If I could give one piece of advice to bus drivers, it's just be aware that buses are an extremely soft target.
Never let anyone on that school bus that doesn't belong. Either it's a kid or a staff member, and that is it.
Don't be complacent, be vigilant of what's out there and what's around you.
It affected everybody, everyone, and I'm trying to make positive for everybody now, and that's what I'm trying to do. If it just stops one person from doing something bad and another person doesn't have to sit where I'm sitting, that's what I want to have.
If anything that my mom has done in making this bill into a law, making the law to help protect one more person, then our loss of him has not been in vain. His death will not be in vain.
Well, first off, I appreciate you coming on such short notice. I appreciate Mr. Edwards connecting us. When I told him what I was up to, what we were doing with this podcast, I mean, it was right away. He's like, you got to talk to my friend Nancy. And so he told us a little bit about your story. And I don't want to, I'll let you tell us the details and how impactful it was. And it's really such a rare sad story. And I think it's incredible just from the short time that I've spoke with you in the last 24 hours, how you've used it to try and do good. And I think that's really kind of what our podcast is about, is how you react to the things that happen to you, whether they're good or bad, and how important it is. And the best thing we can do is learn from people that have gone through these experiences before we go through them. And that way we're a little bit prepared with the knowledge we gain from the older generations to tackle life.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate having you here. But before we get to that, I would love to know where your story starts, when you were born,
Okay.
and what kind of life you were born into.
Well, I was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 1947. And the first part of my life, actually, the first, at 9 months, my mom was living with my grandparents at that time that were there. My father was in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
And at 9 months, we moved. My mother and I got to join him because he had to get all the paperwork, because it was a closed city at that time.
Right.
And, it was the high Hanford
Yeah.
at that time. And so my first 5 years of life, I lived in Los Alamos.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, we would go in and out, and I had my own little badge. And on our last trip that we had in 21, we went to Los Alamos, and I got to, and even as a child, I was remembering things as we were driving around.
Yeah.
And it just, amazed me that I could do that. And we went to the Denver Steel housing where we lived, and saw the house that the people let me go in, because I explained to the lady who I was, and I said, I can just, she kind of looked at me. I said, I can tell you how the inside of that house is. And I explained everything to her.
Oh.
And so I got to see the house, and then we went to get my stamp, because we have a national park for the passport stamps, and was talking to the lady there and sharing with her. And she says, "Are you going to be here for a while?" And I said, "Well, we're kind of looking for some place to eat before we head back," because we were at Burning Yellow, New Mexico, which is right in the middle between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And she says, "I want to call our historian people." And so they met us at this restaurant, and we sat there for 2 hours so I could tell them about growing up there. And I told them, I said, the one of the stories that I remembered most was I went in, we had a huge black lab named Mort. And our house was right up against the canyon. There's a canyon there. And we had like this 10-foot high chain link fence. It was huge. And I said, I ran into my mom one time. I said, "Mom, Mort's going crazy, and he's barking because that other dog's trying to climb up the fence." And Mom went out and ran back in and called security, and it wasn't a dog, it was a black bear. Oh. And they would come up, and the ladies started laughing. They said, "It still happens. They still have the bears trying to climb up into the backyards that are on that canyon."
Oh, isn't that something? I wonder what they were up to and
why they
went in there.
They would just come in and try to get in garbage in people's backyards and eat their dogs and everything. But yeah, so that was one of, so they knew that I had lived there because I knew that experience.
Do you know what your dad did?
He was a journeyman machinist.
Okay.
And if they needed special parts made for the equipment and things like that, they would give him the dimensions, and he would make the pieces of things. And my mom unfortunately lost the letter because I believe it was in 1950. The Cold War was on at that time with Russia and things like that, and some Russian people sent some wire over that was like the thickness of a hair.
Yeah.
Well, my dad and another man made a special diamond bit, and they took one of the strands and drilled holes in it.
I've heard this story before.
And they drilled holes in it, and they sent it back and said, "So what?"
That's incredible. I was in college in a class. I just got chills. And they told that story about how, we had gotten a wire from somewhere. And they were talking about the topic of the discussion was American engineering. And we had gotten a wire from somewhere, and we took it and drilled a hole through it.
Yeah.
And
they put 5 holes in it. They put 5 holes in it.
Because, that's incredible.
And my dad got a letter of commendation. Him and this other man got a letter of commendation for doing that. And sadly, in one of my mom's moves, she lost the letter.
Oh, isn't that something?
But I've lived with that. Now I just got chills.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps because no one has ever.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I was in an engineering class, and they were talking about, they were doing the German. The topic was German versus American engineering. But they had brought that up, that they had given us a wire.
Yeah.
Or we had,
Well,
they were
there's
like
three
the smallest
strands-
wire
there
in the
was
world,
three
right?
strands of wire, and they were the thickness of a human hair. And my dad and this other guy developed a drill bit with a diamond tip, made it, and then they drilled three or five holes in one of the strands, sent it back to them and said, so what?
Yeah. Isn't that neat? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So anyway, but that was one of my histories there, but yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then eventually my aunt came out, because I think I was like 2 when she moved out from South Dakota and went to work as a telephone operator because they had the switchboards then, and she became a head switchboard operator
in Los Alamos.
In Los Alamos.
How many people live there?
There was thousands of people that lived there.
Yeah.
By that time, because this was in the 40s.
Right.
Because I was born in 47. And then my grandparents actually, eventually, my mom's parents left South Dakota and they moved there. And my grandfather was a butcher and he worked at the grocery store. There was only one grocery store. It was a huge grocery store and it's still there. It has grown, but he helped to run the meat department.
Oh, neat.
There in that. So my whole family has history there.
Yeah.
But I remember when we went back, when my aunt got married, they had one church there, and they still only have one church, but it covers all the denominations.
Yeah.
And when she got married, we had moved to Idaho Falls, so we went from Los Alamos to the AEC site in Idaho Falls, but we went back for the wedding, and I remember I wanted to talk to my aunt. And I picked up the phone, and of course it was number please. And I said, I want to talk to my Annie-Law.
Yeah.
She wasn't there, but the operators yelled, who knows an Annie-Law? Because I said she works there. She's an operator. My godmother was working that day, and she was an operator. She goes, oh, send her down to me. And she says, Nancy, get off the phone. Hang up the phone. So we have a history with Los Alamos, and I remember my dad talking about Oppenheimer one time.
Yeah.
And so I knew that name. I did not really know who he was until I got much older and learned his history and everything.
I always think that, and I could be completely wrong on this, it's just my belief when I look back as I'm trying to gather history and look at the world. I always think the two biggest impacts on the world are Walt Disney and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
They're just two sides of the equation where you have, the devastation and the physics of what Oppenheimer and that whole crew, I think the credit goes to, the whole project.
Yeah.
But then what Walt Disney did with the imagination and
yes,
and everything, it's just
fantasy.
Yeah, those two things kind of
and they blend together.
incredible.
And they blend together
they do.
in life. They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what you do with it. So that's where I kind of started, and then, like I said, we moved to Idaho Falls, and my dad worked at AEC. And
What was AEC?
Atomic Energy Commission.
Okay.
It was this site. It was
it's
a
still there.
Hanford site. It's still there. It's
Yeah,
still
that's
operating.
right.
Yeah, and everything. And then my aunt and she got married and had 3 kids, and then they moved out to Idaho, and everybody kind of migrated to Idaho. And then my dad got a bug, and we started moving, and everyone stayed in Idaho, and we just moved all over. And I went to 32 schools in 12 years, and
Wow.
so yeah.
Do you know the reasoning for that?
Well, many years later, I was in my 30s when I found out that he got diagnosed as a manic depressive paranoid schizophrenic, and that's what we grew up with.
Yeah.
And sadly, in those days, they didn't have the words of domestic violence and child abuse and things like that. And so, but my mom finally one day said enough was enough, and had moved back another time to where my grandparents were in Rigby, Idaho, and he says, well, we're going to head back to Texas. And my mom says, no. She says, you go, we'll stay here. And I grabbed my baby sister, my brother, and we went over to a friend's house, and they separated everything. When we came home, he was gone, and that was the best thing that ever happened to us in our lives.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
When you reflect on that, do you try and maybe decipher it and figure out what caused that with your dad? Do you think it was being involved in Los Alamos and knowing what was going on?
That had nothing to do with it. There was I can look back now as an older person and see the family dynamics, and that was in the family dynamics. He just happened to be the one that really went overboard. Yeah, and everything. But
when you look at that experience, has it because I know when you go through things and it's bad at the time, but then you get older and you look
Well,
back.
it influenced my life. It influenced my life because he was abusive, physically, mentally, and psychologically.
Yeah.
And like every day, I was told I was stupid and ugly.
Yeah.
But I had other people who told me that I was beautiful and I was smart, and I wasn't. And I'm the stubborn one.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not going to let you define me.
Yeah. Good
And,
for you.
we would butt heads all the time. I mean, we always butted heads because I was not going to let him define me.
Yeah. Good for you.
And so I graduated 3.85 grade average, so I didn't feel too bad.
Yeah.
With going to 32 schools.
Yeah.
And everything. So.
What kind of mechanisms did you build in place with your character to learn to adapt like that from school to school?
I just learned how to be the new kid. Hi, I'm Nancy. How are you? And sometimes I knew that it wasn't going to be a very long thing, so I would stand off sometimes. There are times when we were at one school where I would gain friends, but I knew that I would lose them.
Yeah.
And so I just had that little wall around me, but
Bubble.
I would a bubble, but I would let friends in. But I learned how to be very selective in making friends. I have some friends that I still have for years. I never had a hometown.
Yeah.
So where my grandparents finally settled in Rigby, Idaho, which is 12 miles outside of Idaho Falls.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called that my
Yeah.
hometown because I went to 5th grade there. I started 5th grade there, finished it in Mesa, Arizona. We came back and stayed with Grandma and Grandpa and did 9th grade there. And I went from Rigby, Idaho to Mountain Home, Idaho, and then Brigham Young, Utah.
Yeah.
That's where I did 9th grade. And my senior year, I did the first month and a half in Fort Stockton, Texas, and then I graduated in Rigby.
Oh, wow.
So, just that there. But I had established friends from when we lived in Rigby, too. So I had these school friends, all my life that I always had contact with, and I still have contact with them.
Yeah.
We have our little Facebook page,
Yeah.
our
Isn't that nice?
graduating class, and
Yeah.
everything. So, still have those contacts. So those are lifelong friends that I have. But
It's interesting that you've having the thought about that, because I didn't move as much as you, but I moved enough. And it's funny how people ask, where are you from?
yeah, I'm from all over.
Yeah.
There's only 5 states west of the Mississippi that I haven't lived in.
Okay.
And then east of the Mississippi, I've lived in 4.
Okay.
But I have been in every state but 12.
Okay.
And I don't count being in an airport.
Airports
don't count.
Yeah,
I mean,
good
if you're
for
going to
you.
be in a state, you've got to be in that state.
I've been to every state but Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's funny you say that. It's interesting when you have that personality that you it's amazing what you can pick up from all the states and the different cultures in the United States.
And it was really fun because when Dick and I got together, he had only been, he was born and raised in Pasco. His family is a founding family on his mother's side of Pasco.
Okay.
And the Lucases. But he had been to Oregon because his father was from Oregon. He had been across the panhandle of Idaho to go to Montana because he had friends, that were in Colorado. So he went that way to, in Colorado. And that's the only places that he had ever been.
He was just content with the Northwest?
Well, he just, he didn't have an adventurous spark until I met him.
Yeah.
And then I drug him everywhere. And because he was kind of shy when I first met him.
Yeah.
Took care of that.
Yeah.
But but I after I graduated, I went into the Air Force and was in the Air Force and did some traveling with that, and then I met my first husband. And the only thing that came good out of that is I've got 2 wonderful children.
Oh, great.
And got rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 5 years with that. Didn't need that.
And that's why that's when you were in the military?
Yeah, met him, and then in those days, if you got pregnant, you were instantly out. So
okay.
Yeah, so that took care of that. But I loved being in the service. So yeah.
Yeah, and you were in the military during Vietnam time.
Yeah, Vietnam.
Late 60s?
I was 65, 66.
Okay, mid 60s.
Yeah.
And did you get deployed?
Yeah, it was for 3 months, and then I came back.
Okay.
So.
What was that experience like?
Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lost a good friend over there, and then I had other friends that died over there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
It's It seems we hear that far too often in the studio. But, it's something I think these younger generations, we take for granted. And of course, a lot of people my age too lost friends, in the Iraq War, and stuff like that. But you really, when you spend time with the, age group 70 and older, we hear a lot about Vietnam and Korea. And
well, it's kind of because my mom met a wonderful man and remarried and got to have a really good life. I'm so glad that she met Gil, and he was career Army, and I went to Vietnam. Then my brother graduated high school. He went to Vietnam, and then Gil went to Vietnam. So we had 3 of us. But our family has always had, my father was Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
So he was in World War II. And I remember when the Korean War was starting, hearing him and my mom discussing whether he would be called up or not. But he never got called because they were worried about that. So I've lived through several wars, and then, we come up to the Desert Storm, and my son got the call. And I'm washing his uniform and getting everything ready. We're packing him up because we didn't know if he'd go or not. And he was on standby for the whole time.
Yeah.
So we didn't know. So our family is military. My sister was Army. I was the oddball. Everyone else was Army, and I was the Air Force.
Yeah.
So, but that was okay. I'm always different.
Yeah. If you're enjoying watching this podcast and the stories that are being told, it's not just about that. There's something bigger going on. The family of the person sitting in this chair right now will have their life story documented forever.
Our private interviews give your family the opportunity to preserve their stories and legacies indefinitely.
This opportunity is created through a comfortable experience, high quality audio and video, and a team that truly cares about the stories of the generations that lived before us.
We view this as a digital time capsule. It offers you the opportunity to preserve your family's stories, not only for now, but for generations to come.
There's something to be said about hearing stories from the individual who lived the stories, and to hear it from the cadence of their voice, with their facial expressions. We have the unique opportunity where we can do it by video call, we can do it in person in the studio, or we can pick up our studio and bring it to you.
We should never take the moments that we have with our loved ones for granted, no matter their age.
The most consistent regret I hear is that people do not record their loved ones. If you'd like to purchase the opportunity for you or your loved one to sit down in our studio, do a video recording with us, or for us to come to you, please check out www.wrinkledwisdom.org. That's www.wrinkledwisdom.org.
Thank you for supporting the podcast. Now back to the episode.
Well, that's incredible. Well, I can tell you we appreciate your service and your family's service. It's something I never ever had the guts to do it. It's I work with a lot of people from the military, and it's truly the skills they have, I think, is incredible that they gain. But I always just have this extra little bit of respect for them because it's something that I could never fathom.
Well, my oldest grandson is on 10 years now. Yeah, 10 or 12 years now. He's Air Force.
Okay.
And when he was talking about he wanted to go in, I said, well, what branch are you looking at? He says, well, Grandma, I'm going to take after you. He says, and he's done great. He got his first deployment. Well, he finished training, and then he was at Nellis Air Force Base, and then he got deployed to England and was working over there. And his last deployment, before they came back, it was supposed to be a 6-week deployment, and he was sent to Poland because the group that he was in, there was 5 of them, and he was the lead. And they had a new part for the plane, and they were the ones that had been trained, so they had to go to all of these, countries. Mm-hmm. And the first one was Poland, and they got there, and the third night that they were there, they kept hearing all this noise, and there was all kinds of things going on, and sirens and things, and they couldn't figure out what. And then they could hear this booming stuff. And he says, we ran up onto the roof of the building that they were at, and they were looking way off, and they could tell bombs were being dropped. And it was the night that Ukraine was being invaded from Russia.
Oh.
That's how close they were to what was happening.
Oh, wow.
And he said the next day, well, he says after that, the influx of Ukrainians fleeing, coming into Poland and everything. he says it was so devastating. Families were coming in, but the men were going, we need weapons. They were begging for weapons because they took all the weapons. Those countries, the civilians do not have weapons.
Yeah.
If you have a weapon, you're like a farmer or somebody that has to maintain control of the vermin and the wild animals on your farms and stuff. And they were begging for weapons. And Bradley was talking to some of the Polish counterparts at the base that they were at, and they were gathering weapons, and they're like, but we don't know what to do. And my grandson goes, well, let's set up an area where we can train them.
Yeah.
And so he went to his men and he says, okay, when we get off duty, he says, this is what I'm going to do. I can't wear my uniform. He says, I will change into my civilians.
Yeah.
I'm going to go help show these people how to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And so all of his men joined him.
Oh,
they would get off
amazing.
duty. They would go. They helped, with the weapons. They were teaching people how to load magazines, how to handle a gun, the safety. That was the main thing because he grew
And these
up
are
with us.
grown men.
Yeah, men. The youngest one that he worked with was a 12-year-old boy who was going with his father back.
Oh, wow.
And he says, Grandma, it broke my heart. He says, but their family was there.
Yeah.
And so he was showing them, teaching them safety, how to load the magazines, how to load the guns, how to shoot the guns. None of these people had ever held a gun.
Yeah.
And everything. And he says, I still wonder today if they're still alive.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And so, so that happened. But
it
also,
goes to show you how important just our
Yeah.
gun rights are. Just
yeah.
whether they're gun
Yeah.
rights, but just our culture. And
Yeah. And people don't realize, this showed my grandson.
Yeah.
But he grew up with guns. My husband, we have guns, and safety was a top priority with us, everything.
Yeah.
But the thing too was that Friday night before he was, because he was deployed on that coming Monday, was the night that Dick was murdered.
Oh.
And he went to his, notified his commander right away, and they said, we can't, you're the lead, we don't have anyone else, so he had to go.
Yeah.
And so he was over there, he was over there for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
But they went to all of the countries around Lithuania,
Yeah.
to all the bases there, and everywhere that they went, here's where the Ukrainians were coming.
The refugees were coming.
Refugees were coming in and everything, and they were showing. They would go to the different bases, and they were showing them what they did in Poland.
Yeah.
To help the Ukrainians.
And so Dick was a part of how long were you married for at this time? This is not that long ago. So you'd been married for 30 something years?
39. Well, our first date was December 18th, 1982. And then he asked me to marry him on Valentine's Day, 1984. And we got married July 13th, 1985. So 39 years?
Yeah.
No, 36. We were married 36 years, together 39 years.
Yeah. Oh, that's something.
Yeah. And it was the first time I ever had peace.
Yeah.
And he knew, I let him know up front, he was getting a broken woman, because I had two very horrifically bad marriages. And he took us on, here I am, this single, I'd been a single mother for quite a while, and had two teenagers that were just being, well, we had been through a very horrific event, and they were acting out in a lot of rage and anger and everything. And that's where I learned about anger and rage and hate and what it can do to your body if you in stress. I went bald.
Yeah.
There was a time when, cue ball.
From stress?
From stress.
Yeah.
And my doctor says either get control of it or I'm putting you on Prozac or whatever. And I said, no, I don't. I don't like to take pills. So I learned how to handle it.
Yeah.
But he took us on, and he says from the very beginning he included my children. I mean, he was a very extraordinary man.
Yeah.
They all thought he was the confirmed bachelor.
Yeah.
And then after we had dated several months, and then they found out, and they go, you're dating? He goes, yeah. He says, and I found out just here a while back that he told Dave Roberts. He says, yeah. He says, I really think this might be a serious event for me. And he's like, whoa. So, he included my kids right away. That's the kind of man that he was.
Yeah.
Friday night was our date night, and it was all the way through our marriage.
Every Friday?
Every Friday night was a date night, even if we just stayed home and rented a movie and everything. That was our date night. But Saturday, whatever the kids wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you gave a night to yourselves, then a night to the family.
Yeah.
And, yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
That's so important. Was Dick, so he was a pretty reserved guy? Or controlled? Was he very controlled? Or
No. He was this giant teddy bear.
Yeah.
But he was, I would call him actually a man's man. He was so self-confident that nothing bothered him. And he, I was talking with, his very best friend, Don. I said, do you remember if Dick was ever in any fights? He goes, no. He says, who was going to fight Dick? I mean, he was 6'2.5", this big guy. Yeah. But he didn't ever use that to intimidate. He was a peacemaker.
Well respected.
Yeah. And I always tease him because the life that I grew up with, and he had to leave it. He had to leave it to Beaver life.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, he was to leave it to Beaver life.
Yeah.
And everything, and he was just laid back, and he was very cool. And I can count 5 times that I ever saw him angry.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he got angry, you knew he was angry. Oh yeah. And one of them was there was an incident, and I want to say 2019, I think it was. Yeah, 2019. His school bus had gotten shot at and I think it was like a BB gun. He's pretty sure it was like a pellet gun or something like that. And it went to the glass. Well, a piece of the glass cut one little girl on his vest lip. And it was bleeding. Of course, he pulled over immediately, called the police. They called the police and everything. And he was very upset. He grabbed his water bottle, went back and was taking care of her, and just angry that this little girl was hurt. And after that, she wouldn't ride the bus. She was scared to ride the bus. And he come home one night and he goes, honey, he says, you know what a Purple Heart is? And I go, well, duh, yeah. And he goes, can you make a Purple Heart for me? I said, well, tell me what your idea is. So I go, okay. So it was an ugly Purple Heart, but we made one. And then we made up a certificate and everything from him. And he called the mom. He says, I need you to have her on the bus. Yeah. She goes, okay. And so he went in and he talked to the school because that was the last drop off. He says, this is what I want to do. So when he got there, as the kids were getting off, he says, okay, and the principal and the vice principal and teachers and everything came out, and they had the kids sit in a half circle, and the kids were like, okay, what's going on? And he asked the kids, he goes, okay, he says, do you guys know what a Purple Heart is? And they go, no. He goes, well, a Purple Heart is what you give a person when something bad has happened, but they've survived it and they are brave to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
And he called the little girl up and he says, I have this Purple Heart for you because today you were brave enough to get back on this bus. And he says, I am so proud of you, and gave her the certificate and everything. And I found the copy of the certificate.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And everything. And she, she was just very proud of that.
Yeah.
And when he was killed, a few days after that, they got a call at the bus barn. It was from this little girl's mom. And she said, I just want you to know my daughter still has that award.
Yeah.
And that pin. And she is just devastated.
Yeah.
It was on her bulletin board in her room.
How long did Dick drive the bus? And this is for Pasco?
Yes, it was for Pasco. Well, he'd been in the dental business for 40 plus years. Yeah. And finally retired. 6 months into retirement, he came in one day and he goes, honey, he says, I love you. He says, but the honeydews are killing me. I got to go back to work. And I go, okay. Yeah. So what are you going to do? He says, I don't know. So he went down to WorkSource and come home one day and he says, well, I think I figured out what I'm going to do. And I go, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm going to be a school bus driver. Oh. And in my mind, I'm going, oh my God, you're going to warp every child in the world. Yeah. He was the grandpa, and it's funny because our grandkids did not realize, especially Bradley, didn't realize that Dick wasn't blood until he went into service. And it's like, Grandpa's not blood. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, in our family, it doesn't matter. But he was the grandpa that, like, when there's Miranda, Heather, Bradley, Douglas, and Abby. That's the 5 grandkids. But they were, like, 4 and 5. And Vista Field still had the airplanes and everything and the skydivers. Well, Sabrina and I were in the ABC tile store that day, and we came out and they were watching the skydivers and didn't think anything of it. Well, the next day Sabrina and I were around, the girls were in the back seat, and I said, "Oh, look at the skydivers." And Miranda goes, "Yeah." She says, "They got thrown out of the planes because they didn't have tickets."
Oh,
that's what Dick taught them. And it's like, Sabrina goes, "Who told you that?" And she said, "Well, Grandpa." Yeah.
Oh man,
so
with
they
a sense of
all
humor.
kinds of things like that, and then there's the invisible reindeer poop.
Oh yeah.
You know about invisible reindeer poop? Oh yeah. They would usually spend Christmas Eve with us at the house. Everyone would, we had room for everybody. And one year they weren't going to be staying. So they were going to come in the morning because they had some other things happening. As they're leaving that night, Dick told him, he says, "Well, when you come back in the morning, be careful where you step because, the reindeer poop's going to be out there, but you can't see it." He says, "If you look close, you can see the sparkling in it because, the fairy dust, the fairies put the dust on the hay that the reindeer eat so they can fly."
Yeah.
He says, you can probably maybe see the sparklies. They go, "Oh, Grandpa." Well, the next morning, Sabrina called. She says, "Well, we're on our way." And we go, "Okay." So he went out, and he had already had some leaves and little twigs and stuff, and he had been to a gun show.
Yeah.
And got this can of spray stuff called fart spray. That's so bad.
Stinks that bad.
Oh my God, it was terrible. And he went out and sprayed it, and he had my gold glitter and sprinkled gold glitter all over.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And so when the kids got there, he goes, "Okay, watch out, there's a pile of it over here," and everything. And so they're going, "Oh, Grandpa," and Heather, she goes, "Oh, I see the sparklies, I see the sparklies," and she's all excited. Well, Bradley runs over and sticks his nose down and throws up. And everything. And they're just like amazed, that he says, "Don't step in it. It's all over." So they very carefully back away from the invisible reindeer poop. So that's how warped our grandchildren were.
Oh, that's great.
But then it's been a few years back. We'll see. Samantha's 20 now, so it's been quite a few years back. I get the phone rings, and I go, "Hello," and this is Miranda, and I go, "What's going on?" She goes, "Well, I need to talk to Grandpa." And I go, "Okay, what's happening?" She goes, "Well, I need to know how to make the reindeer poop."
Yeah.
So it has passed down to all the great grandchildren.
Oh, that's something. That would be cool if we got to get that instructions for that spread out among the parents.
Yeah.
We can't let the kids find out.
Yeah. Don't let the kids know.
Oh, that's so
but we
good.
have so many stories of stuff that he did.
bet.
But yeah.
I bet. And so he had driven the school bus for how long until the incident?
That was his 6th year. Well, 6 going
6
on 7th year.
So he was dedicated.
Yeah. Well, the first year was a learning curve.
Oh, I bet.
And I remember he came home one day and he says, I really am trying to figure this out. I'm not sure what to do. And we were talking because he would, go and pick kids up, and then he would have stops that he would have to wait to go to the next stop. So if you see a school bus, because I always wondered, why is a school bus sitting in this parking lot? But that's what they would do. They would have different places that they would stop to wait to get to the next place.
Yeah.
They had this timetable. He says, "I've got about 6 to 8 kids on this one thing, and they get a little restless. I'm just not sure what to do." And I said, "Why don't we get some books and you start reading to them? Just start reading the story out loud." He goes, "Oh," he says, "We'll try that. Try anything."
Yeah.
So he got his little ditty bag, and we put some books in there. And the first book he tried was Hank the Cow Dog. I don't know if you're familiar with Hank the Cow Dog.
Yeah.
Hank the Cow Dog is. Oh yes, Rip and Snort.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, if you have to get them and read them. We have the whole set. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but so the next day, he got to the stop and he said his little timer, and he got the book out and he started reading. It's like, oh, so and some kids in the back go, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm reading a story." "Well, we can't. Well, come on up."
Yeah.
So they came up and he read, and then the little timer went off, and he grabbed his bookmark and put it in. And they go, "Well, what did you got to read this morning?" He goes, "No." He says, "We got to go." They go, "Well," he says, "Be here tomorrow if you want to find out what happens. You got to be here tomorrow." And they asked, "Well, what is that thing in your book?" And he says, "Well, that's a bookmark." "Well, where do you buy those?" "Oh, no, you make those." You have no idea how much construction paper went through my cutter.
You were making them for
Oh, he was
kids.
making them, and then he would hand them out to them, and he showed them how you decorate your own. And they had more decorated bookmarks
Oh, isn't that?
And
It makes you wonder how many kids went to school that day just to listen to the story.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. But
sorry.
So many kids got turned on to reading because of him. And I know there was 5 kids that he picked out that were dyslexic, and was able to get them help for that. But one year, this mother is waiting at the bus stop. The kid isn't with her, and he was homesick, but he was crying and throwing an absolute fit. He had to go to school, and she says, "You can't. You're sick." The doctor says no. And she says, "Why?" He says, "Because I'll miss the story."
Oh.
And so she was telling Dick, and he says, "Tell him not to worry. When he comes back, we'll catch him up."
Yeah.
So when he came back, Dick didn't catch him up. All the kids told him the story. That way the kids were learning, cognitive, recollection and things in sequence and how to tell the story that they had been hearing and everything. And he did that all the time. And then he discovered riddles. I, showed him on the computer to find the riddle site.
Yeah.
And so I was typing out riddles. And he would hand them out. And all the ones that brought him back and at least tried to find an answer to the riddle got bus bucks, because there's little fake Monopoly money, and the different schools had the store, so they could take them in and buy stuff. So, and they had to figure it out. So they would bring their riddle in to see if they won, and then they would get bus bucks for doing things like that. But they were always, learning.
Yeah.
And,
So you had your own little side operation for all these kids on the school bus. Getting them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so neat.
Turned them on to reading and science and learning, anything like that. One time there was one stop where it was down near the river there off of A Street or down in that area. And he saw there was a muskrat. He was, the kids had seen the different, he says, "I don't know a lot about muskrats." He says, "I wish somebody could go into the library and look it up for me and write some information for me." He got 5 reports on muskrats handed to him.
That neat? So the kids adored him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the kids loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got so many things, special, always pictures. He was always being given pictures for Easter, for Christmas, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
That means so much to a kid.
Oh, yeah. But the second year he made the comment, he says, "I think I missed my calling." Because he loved it. He loved it. Yeah. Well, no, being a bus driver. He enjoyed being a bus driver and helping the kids and everything like that. And he loved the littles. Oh, you don't mess with his littles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if your name wasn't on that list to take that little off the bus, you did not get him. And there was an uncle that was going to, "You're going to lose your job." And Dick says, "You go right ahead and you just try."
Yeah.
But you aren't getting my little. Even though you are the uncle, your name is not on this list.
And so he was the bus driver long enough to see the kids go from kindergarten up through.
Well, the one family that year, they had 5 kids. And the last one went on the bus that year.
Oh.
And we were lucky enough to talk to the mom and dad. And he says, when I put the last one on, he says, "I told your husband." He goes, "Okay, you've got my last kid." And he says, "Your husband told me, don't worry, I will protect them."
Yeah.
The little wasn't on that day, but the others were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? So for people that don't understand the intensity, I guess, of this story, and they're probably wondering what happened to Dick, are you okay with telling us a little bit about the story?
Yeah, I can tell. It was September 24th, 2021, and Dick loved the fall. This was his favorite time of year, and he called that day, it was what he called a Kodak moment, Hallmark Day. Perfect weather. It was just a really good day, happy day, and he was having a really good day. He came in that morning and from his first run, and he just he says everything's great. He had the best group of kids that year. Usually he would have one on every year.
Yeah.
He says, I don't have one. He says they're all good kids and everything. And he left that afternoon, and he called about 2:30. He says, "I just found out the littles got out early, so I won't have the littles." He says, "So I'll just swing by the store," because he wanted tacos that night for dinner. He said, "I'll swing by the store and pick everything up so you don't have to worry about dinner." I said, "Okay." And I went about doing my stuff, and I have days where I call them pajama days.
Oh yeah.
If I don't have to go anywhere, but I was working on my jewelry because I designed and make jewelry, and I was doing some stuff, and his girlfriend came over because I was doing a special wrap for a stone for her daughter's birthday, and picked out the wire that we wanted and everything, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and they said, "Have you heard from Richard?" And I said, "Well, his phone dialed me a little bit ago, but I couldn't get through, so." And it had, I could, hear the kids in the background, and I just, thought, okay, he's got really noisy ones and stuff, but I couldn't, I was screaming, hello, but his phone, he had a flip phone, and it would do that once in a while. I thought, okay, not realizing it was the last time, I did not know he was trying to call me.
Yeah.
And then I got the call that I was told, well, there's been an accident, and they're taking him by ambulance to Cadillac. And you need to get there as soon as possible. And I said, okay. And I just hung up, and I'm running upstairs, and I've got the portable phone with me. And I called my daughter, and she answered. And I said, Sabrina, Daddy's been in an accident. I need to get to Cadillac right away. She goes, Mom, I'm on my way to get you. Don't try to drive. So by the time she got there, I was dressed, and we took off, and we're discussing. I said, for them to take him to Cadillac, it had to be, it had to be, the bus had to be hit by a semi. We're trying to figure out how bad it was, because we thought he had been hit, the bus had been hit.
Yeah.
And we got there, and she dropped me off, because she had her 2 grandkids that she was babysitting. And she called the other grandma, and she says, can you meet us? So she waited for Phyllis at the parking place, which Phyllis luckily got there at the same time. But by the time Sabrina got in, I went in the hospital, and went up to the desk, and I said, I'm Nancy Lenhart, and I understand my husband was brought in. About that time, this head nurse was going by. She said, you're Mrs. Lenhart? And I said, yes. And all of a sudden, I've got 2 police officers behind me. And I'm like, okay. And they took me into what they called the family room. And there was a chaplain and some other people and a counselor, and as I'm finding out all these different people, and then the doctor came in, and they said, I said, is he hurt really bad? Is he, what's going on? And the chaplain goes, well, we need to let you know that a man got on your husband's bus and stabbed him to death. I said, what do you mean stabbed him to death? Or stabbed him. Mm-hmm. He had not been declared dead yet. And Sabrina walked in the door about that time, and I said, Sabrina, Daddy wasn't in a car accident. Somebody attacked Daddy.
Yeah.
And the doctor was there, and well, in the meantime, they were talking. I said, well, you need information. I said, I need his wallet. So they went and got his wallet, and I got his wallet because I have medical information forms for me and him, and we always kept it in his wallet behind his, So I handed that to the doctor. I said, you need this because this has got all of his pertinent information, what he's allergic to, what he had and everything. And I thought it was very interesting because the doctor opened it up and then turned it over, didn't really read it, and folded it back up and just kind of held it in his hands. And then they dropped the bomb of what was going on. And as soon as I got that, I looked and I said, I want to see my husband. I want to see him now. And the doctor goes, well, he's in pretty... And I said, sir, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I've seen probably stuff you'll never see in your life. I want to see my husband now.
Yeah.
And so they took us in to see him, and we were able to say goodbye.
Uh-huh.
But they say that the hearing is the last thing to go. And at first we were telling him that we needed him to stay because that's what we wanted. But there was a moment of lull, and the doctor, they had stopped the compressions because they were doing compressions when we walked in. And the doctor was reading off the latest labs, and I stepped back for a moment, and I looked at the guy who was, supposedly pumping the bag for air. I looked at the monitors, and I listened to what was being said, and realized, and I looked at Dick, and I told him, honey, I know you can't stay. You need to go with that angel that's standing there. And that may sound weird, but I saw it.
Yeah.
And you need to go with him. It's okay. I'll be okay, and the kids will be okay. and I love you, and hug, hug, kiss, kiss. And then guy started to do compressions again, and I said no. And the doctor goes, he says, do you want us to stop? And I said, he's gone.
Yeah.
I said, he just left. He's not here. And he would not want this. This is not what he would want. And the doctor said, okay, does anyone in the room have a problem with us stopping? And nobody had a problem with that.
Yeah.
And so they declared his time of death.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I turned to the doctor. I said, okay, Dick is an organ donor, so you need to do whatever you've got to do to use his organs. And he took my hand and he says, honey, he says, we can't. I said, were they stabbed? He goes, no, honey. He says, he's a crime scene. We can't use any of it.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart, because that was one thing he was so proud of. He says,
Yeah.
use every inch of me.
Yeah.
You know, if someone needs a toe, graft a toe. He says, you know.
That's so.
And because he was so selfless that way.
Yeah.
And so that's, but then we learned that this guy had come up to the bus. He had drove himself to the school, and you know, had gone up to the bus and you know, waved, and Dick opened the door to ask him what he needed. Well, he hopped up on the step and he asked if it was going to road such and such. He says, this is a school bus, buddy. He says, you need to go over here to catch a bus. And he turned like he was going to get off the bus, but that's when he pulled the knife and attacked Dick and stabbed him to death. And Dick finally, there was a fight, and because he wasn't going to let him get to the kids, and he finally took his foot off the brake and drove the bus into the huge bus and bush and tree that was ahead of him.
Yeah.
And that's what threw him off. And of course, by then he realized he wasn't going to be able to take the bus, because his plan was to take the bus and kill the children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I was just not something.
Yeah. So. But he's sitting in the jail, and it's been there ever since. He's on $1 million cash bond. And so we go every month and we wait, and so.
See what happens with the court.
Yeah.
I know. It's horrible. Sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. I couldn't imagine, and especially because, you know, especially with like being an organ donor, you don't get the walk of honor or anything that, you know, that somebody like that deserves in the final moments, if they're willing to save other people's lives. Well, obviously he did save people's lives, which is incredible.
35 children get to have their purpose.
Yeah.
I think I explained to you, you know, Dick and I, we always believe when we're born, God gives us each a purpose. We never know what that purpose is. We know what Dick's was that day. And we have 35 children that have a purpose that they get to fulfill. We don't know what theirs is going to be, but if it's not theirs, maybe one of their children, maybe one of their grandchildren is going to invent something. Maybe they'll find a cure for Alzheimer's, find how to develop a fuel that we don't need oil and gasoline and things like that. Who knows? There's a purpose for one of them being alive.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and for all of them, really, and people that they affect, and the stories get told and told and told.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we're so thankful that you came to. I'm sure that it'll never be easy to tell.
No.
But it deserves to be told, which is, you know, hearing about his character.
Yeah.
And I loved hearing about his personality.
Oh yeah, he was.
You know, beforehand. I think that it takes such a special person to do that.
Yeah.
And it's too bad he was taken too soon.
Yeah. He had so much to give, and he gave it freely. I mean, he was, if somebody needed something, he was there. They could call and go, "Hey, Dick, such and such is." "Oh, I'll be there. I'll be there." And more than once, you know, we would, you know, throw stuff in the car and take off and help somebody. You know, I remember one time someone got stuck up on the pass. We loaded everyone up to the pass and hauled them home and everything like that. But he was that's just the kind of man that he was.
Yeah.
He was a giver. He was a giver.
You know, it's a beautiful thing about what we have going on with technology these days, being able to share these stories and be able for you to tell us, you know, a little bit about them. Obviously, you can't do it in such a short amount of time, but it gives the people the opportunity to still live on, you know, these nowadays with being able to document and share it. And I hope that as many people as possible listen, and this story will impact a lot of people, I'm sure. And I know you've talked about yesterday on the phone briefly. You talked about how I think we've mentioned this before on here. How life's 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react.
Yes.
And so you knew that you couldn't change what had happened, but you can change the future going forward.
Yeah.
For others. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and what you've been doing. And
well,
actually, before that, I'd like to, before we talk about that, I really would like to talk about maybe your character or what traits you think that you have that give you that mentality that allowed you to be so strong through this process.
People always say you're so strong, and I have to give that to God every day, because I get up every day and I go, okay, it's another day. You gave me another day. You're going to have to also give me the strength to get through it. There are days when I'm strong, and there's days when I break down again. Luckily, I'm going to the top trauma therapist for the state of Washington. I believe in mental wellness.
Yeah.
And I really get upset when people say, well, you can get over it. No. If you break your leg, what do you do? If you broke your leg, where would you go?
Yeah, to the doctor.
To doctor. Yeah. Same thing. Sometimes our brains have such a trauma hit it that it does not know how to process it and make sense out of it. So you need help and guidance in getting it back to where it needs to be. And when you have, like I was telling you on the phone, when you're dealing with death, you have, all your different kinds of death. You have cancer, strokes, drownings, car accidents, fires. You have you start out with your pets. You've got your friends, aunts, uncles, cousins, your parents, your grandparents, sibling, child. I've had all of that and dealt with all that. But when you have someone that dies from murder.
Yeah. Most of those are all accidental.
Yeah.
There's not intent in those.
And with that, there's so many different facets to it.
Yeah.
And with the others, you have your mourning period, you have your period of grief, but you are able to slowly move forward and move on. And there's a difference between moving forward and moving on. And, but with this, once a month, we go to the court and we sit and we wait. He comes in, they get a continuance. We've done that, we're on year 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, you relieve, the 24th of every month I do a post about it. This year, my girlfriends have called it my love letters to Dick.
Oh.
And each year, it's a little different, but I'll have to bring you some so you can. I've got one on my phone. I can read the latest one if you want. But, when you're dealing, and plus the grief is a little bit different. I did not realize until this that I knew there was shock.
Yeah.
You go into shock. I didn't realize shock could last for months.
Yeah.
Because I was a good 6 to 8 months before my shock finally came out. But in the meantime, in that first year, we lost 12 more people. Deaths. Mm-hmm. And in this 3 going on 4 years, there's 23 people that we've lost. So it's like, yeah. And then 4 months after he was killed, I came home to a flood in my house, major flood. So it's been, a roller coaster. But I think, and this may sound very weird, but I think in 2022, God gave me the flood because I needed that time to come out of the shock. It kept me occupied on what I had to do because I was not ready for the rest of what was coming.
Yeah.
And that may sound
that's
weird.
Neat to look at it.
But you've got to look at of course, when I'm looking for something I can't find it was here it is. Yeah, one of our greatest freedoms is our ability to choose how we react to situations in our life. And that's something that I had to learn at a very young age.
Yeah.
Is how to choose how I was going to react. And so
Does it help you writing things out?
Yeah, I write things down.
Yeah.
And yeah. Let's see. Be patient with me.
All right. You'll be patient with me too.
Oh, I'll tell you. But I send this out once a month on the 24th. There's other little things that come in there. Okay. Okay. And this is what I wrote this month. Well, November 24th. It says, tomorrow will be day 1155. 3 years, 2 months. November 24th, 2024. I apologize, honey, for not making a post for October 24th. There were so many things happening the last month. Plus, I was really having a hard time with my depression. Some days I do really good, and other days I break again. Being totally alone now doesn't help much either. Losing Princess was very hard and still makes me cry. I had to put my little puppy dog to sleep. Her passing on the 3-year anniversary of your funeral told me that you were waiting for her when she got there, which gave me some solace. The kids just don't grasp it and don't understand, and I've given up trying to explain to them. If I say anything, it's always we're busy with our lives, and I think so were we, but we always made time for them and was there for them whenever they needed us, no matter what we were doing. One of the hardest things I did during this time was I threw away your toothbrushes and the 3-year-old toothpaste. I've given some more of your clothes to charity, but still have more to go through. I'm happening to do that alone also because I need to touch each piece before I put it in the box. Not just throw it in the box so it can be done faster. It's hard. It feels like I'm giving little pieces of you away. Logically, I know I'm not, but still. Dear friends did invite me to some wonderful events, and I did have a good time at them. They have no idea how much they are appreciated for that. And Halloween at the Lees was a real hoot. You would have had a blast. I've been trying to take more steps forward. I'm starting to go back to the gym and have completed my first month. I've started wearing makeup again, but maybe not tomorrow because the trying is hard right now. Got new glasses, updated the style. Nobody noticed. LOL. And next month I will be getting my braces on.
Oh.
I know you'll be happy that I'm finally doing something for myself. The court hearing started but only got halfway through. His attorney is delaying things again. Probably won't get to finish it until next year, and hopefully trial to follow soon after. The only kids I have updates on are Kipton, and he's such a little character, growing like a weed and going to keep his mom and dad on their toes. Mariah and Bradley are so good at calling and keeping me updated and sending pictures. And little Miss Harper is getting big too. She looks so much like Shelby when she was little, and you can tell already that she has a bit of sass. I wonder where that comes from. LOL. Shelby always makes sure to call me as often as she can. As far as I know, things are still working on for getting ready to hopefully be going to Washington, D.C. next year. One slow step at a time, but we will get there. I'm working on 4 books now. It does keep me busy and my mind on other things. As usual, I know there are things I'm forgetting to tell you, but I realize that you already know. I do miss your hugs and kisses, and that hurts when I think about all the last ones. So for now, I will say goodbye and our usual hug, kiss, and that I love you very much.
Oh. That's so sweet.
So,
Yeah, good for you.
So that's what I do, along with my poetry and everything else.
And these things have helped you, obviously, or helping you. Were you, did they, a part of your process of healing, was this stuff that you took on yourself to do, or did somebody tell you that you should do these things, or did you read about it, or?
Okay, when you say things, which things?
Like your writing once a month.
No, that's just something I've always done. I've written all my life. I've journaled and everything. So, but this, I've always written poetry. This is just given it a new depth, I guess you could say. But yeah, our gotta get composed here for a minute. It's interesting how grief affects things. And grief is almost like a war. And, you need other people to help you through it. And you never really get over it, and you don't really go through it. You learn how to live with it.
Yeah.
And it will, in eventual time, not be as hard. And to digress back a little bit, right after he was killed, we had a meeting at the old bus facility. And we were talking with the people there, and Michelle Whitney and all of the main bus people were there. Michelle Whitney's the head of the Pasco School District. And we found out that a lot of the drivers were having problems with their grief and anger. And some of them were very angry, and that really upset me. I said, is there a time that I can come when they all get in? Because I need to talk to them. I need to tell them.
Yeah.
And so they set it up, and we got out there, and it surprised me because the police were there. That's how I got to know the Pasco Police Department. They're my posse.
Oh yeah.
And I'm on hugging terms with all of them, including the chief.
Those are good people to be on hugging terms with.
And everything. But like I told everybody, I said, I know we're all going through this right now. I said, but I want you to understand something. And I'm giving you permission to grieve. You may think that you aren't allowed to grieve, but you are. I said, but the thing is I understand there's a lot of anger and hate right now. And I said, I don't want you to have that, because this is what I have done. Because that night, when we got back from the hospital, I can't tell you what time my daughter finally took me upstairs to go to bed, because we were making phone calls and notifying people. But when I went upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, and I knew that there was one thing that I needed to do, and that was I had to make a decision of what I wanted to do with this guy. And I gave him to God and to the justice system. And like I told God, I said, okay, I'm giving him to you. I don't know what, people are going to say, well, you have to give him forgiveness. I said, God, I'm giving that to you to give to him. I don't know what type of forgiveness you want to give him, but that's in your court now. I'm handing him to you. And then I'm handing him to the court system. I'll be part of all of it, but I'm giving him to you. Yeah. And I put him in a little box, and he's in a box over here. The only time I deal with him is when he comes out and he's in court. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't think about him. I will not waste my energy or time on him. And that's what I told the bus drivers. It takes too much energy, and it will affect your body. It will. Oh, yeah. It will cause you stress. It takes too much energy to have hate and anger. I want you to use that energy for other things. I said, I have no idea where I'm going to put mine yet. I know there's something that's going to come along that I'm going to do with it, but I will not waste it on him. I'm not going to waste my energy on him.
Yeah, good for you.
And I haven't. And then, of course, I went through the flood. And in it was January of 2023, I got a call from a retired Missouri Highway State Patrolman named Gary Moore, like the old actor. Yeah. And he had been an instructor. Well, he went around the United States giving seminars and events on bus driver safety. And at that time, he only had 2 cases. One went back to the 50s, and another one was in 1983. And both of those there was a parental dispute on custody. And those 2 bus drivers had been shot to death on their buses. Oh, wow. And then he heard about Dick. And of course, Dick's case is just totally different from everything else. And he wanted to find out if he could use Dick's case as another example on his seminars and everything. And Julie, gave him the information. She says, well, and by that time, she's the head detective. I should have explained that. And she says, you really need to talk to Nancy. So he called. She messaged me first, and I said, sure, he can call. So she gave him my phone number. And he called, and our first phone call was 2 hours. And we have 2-hour conversations all the time. We still call.
Oh,
We've become
good.
friends.
Yeah.
And everything.
That doesn't surprise me.
Gee, I talk. So, but anyway, and that's how I found out that we did not have any protection for our bus drivers on the buses. There was no trespassing. We have no trespassing for the schools, for the school grounds, for the arenas, our football fields, everything. That all has, no trespassing. School buses have nothing. And it's like, this is not right.
Yeah.
And so I started doing research and found out that at that time there was only 5 states. And we were getting close to, by that time, for the, they had gotten the new transportation facility ready. And so I decided when we did the ribbon cutting ceremony, I would let everybody know of what I wanted to do. Because I had
because they named the bus.
Yeah, it's
station.
the Richard Lenhart Transportation Center.
Oh, man.
I love saying that.
Yeah.
And so when we did the ribbon cutting ceremony, before we went outside to do that, they had me get up, and they're so wonderful and giving. They gave me flowers and all kinds of stuff, and I spoke to them, and I said, okay, guys, this is something, because they knew I have another mission.
Yeah.
But this became mission number 1. The other became mission number 2. I said, I have another mission that I'm on. And I told them what I had found out, and I said, this is not right, and I don't know. I said, I think we need to get a law made. I don't know how to do that. I said, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And Linda, one of the bus drivers in the back, she yelled, Nancy, how are you going to do that? And like I told her, I looked at everybody, I said, as you usually know, I have no frigging idea. However, which is my favorite word, I know that God's going to send me somebody to help me. And this was on a Thursday. Tuesday, I get a call from Russell Shervin, who's the head of the bus drivers union here in Pasco. And he says, we've already got a bill drafted, and we want you to be the spokesperson. We want to help you get this made. And I said, okay. And so we started having some meetings. We went over the bill, and I said, no, this needs to be changed here, 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 and here. And so we got the changes made, and then he started getting appointments set up. And in July, we started meeting with senators and representatives and started lining them up and getting, people on our side. And we did several trips over to Olympia and, met with people over there. And then it got picked up. And, Senator Matt Banky, he is just an awesome guy. And he picked up the flag. And so God didn't send me just a person. Yeah. He sent me a whole army, whole army and everything. And so in January and February, we went to Olympia and testified in the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
And we went back and testified a second time in the House. So I always thought I understood the government until I did this.
Yeah.
And, like my one friend, she says, well, Nancy, you're stepping outside of your box. I said, stepping out of the box. I said, I've jumped out and I'm stomping on it. I think I would have, childbirth would have been easier at times. But I should have had these all marked. I didn't mark them, but one of my sayings, if you're scared of doing it, then do it scared.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's one of my sayings. And it doesn't get easier, you get better. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Was it intimidating for you to do that, or did you feel like your mission was so strong that you?
I felt that my mission was so strong. I wasn't going to let anything stop me, and but I met so many interesting and wonderful people, and I know there's one senator that we were a little worried about, and when we went in, we were sitting there, and it was kind of interesting because they have these little towers of lights. It has, green, and then it goes to amber, and then it goes to red. And when it goes red, they cut you off. So Russell did first, and it was my turn. I said, well, I'll talk as fast as I can. And the guy says, no. He says, you talk all you want.
Yeah.
I didn't have the light. It's like, okay. But this one senator was there, and the whole time, and I had been watching him when Russell was talking. He was like writing and never looked up. And Russell was watching him too, because we were worried about him. And I introduced myself, said who I was, and I was there to represent this bill, that I was for this bill and everything. And then I said on September 24th, 2021, a man got on my husband's school bus with the intent of harming the children. My husband said no, and so this man viciously and repeatedly stabbed my husband to death in front of 35 elementary school children. Yeah. Russ said this person jerked up in his seat, dropped his pen and sat back, and he said he was totally fixated on watching me the whole time, and he went from a no to a yes because of my testimony.
Yeah,
he knew Dick had been killed, but he did not know, and they were all, from what I'm understanding from feedback that we got, they were all blown away that I was very upfront, but that's the story. That's what happened. Yeah. And so
good for you for having the strength to do that. That's incredible. Not many people would do that. And
I got through it, and Russ was patting my back every once in a while because he could tell I was getting ready to cry. But I got through it, and everyone did a marvelous job of testimonies.
What was the name of this bill?
The Richard Lenhart Act, no trespassing on school buses.
Oh yeah,
and that's what the law is.
Great. Yeah. Wait, maybe we can get a link to that, can't we? We can put it probably on the description of the video so people can read it.
Yeah. But that was in January and February, and then the governor signed it into law on March 26, 2024.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. And there was no no's, right?
It passed the Senate 49-0, passed the House 94-0, went through the Rules Committee with no opposition whatsoever.
Oh, good for you.
And like I was telling you, after the governor had signed it, our little group had walked out, and Matt Banky and I were walking out, and we were standing over there with Russell, and we were all talking. And I think it was Griffey. I can't remember the representative's name, but anyway, he came up and he was talking to them. He says, how did you guys do this? You did this in 9 months, no opposition. This is unheard of. How did you do this?
Yeah.
And Matt and Russell both went like this, and they said, have you not met Nancy?
Oh.
And I'm like, and I turned around and go, what did I do now?
Yeah. Oh,
and everything. So, but we got that done. And so in the meantime, this year, there's a group out of Missouri that has been going and doing education on school safety. And they now heard about this bill and this law now. And they want to take it and use it as a template to take it to Washington, D.C., so that it becomes a federal requirement of each state to have this for their school buses.
Oh, good for
and
you.
So he came out, C.J. Huff came out, and I did my first event, did an event for him and everything. And so he's working on it, and he's got a group that has picked up, that's coming in, and they're doing training with them so they can send them out to start doing that.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
And what's the timeline? Do they know getting that moved up?
It's going to take longer than the 9 months. But if we can, he's laying the groundwork now, because he's there in Missouri.
Yeah. He's
worked with people in Kansas. He just did a meeting thing with some senators in Kentucky, and I know he's meeting with some people in Tennessee. He's networking now, getting some groundwork laid and everything, and I may be going back there this summer.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, and I know there's some training stuff that I'm going to be involved in too. Right. So,
when you look back on this bill and the whole experience, and you talk about a purpose, what do you see as your purpose, or what do you hope for the outcome to be?
Truthfully, I ask God that all the time. Is this what my purpose is?
Yeah.
I don't know. If this is what I'm supposed to do, then I've got to do it.
Yeah.
But I just know that it wasn't right
Yeah.
that we didn't have that protection. And it's not right that we're only the 6th state. And what's wrong with this picture? Because it really makes me angry.
Yeah.
And people that are finding out, they're going, what do you mean our state doesn't have this? Because it's common, it's like a common sense thing, and you would think it would be included in a distance.
It's one of those things where we end up being reactive on something we should have been so proactive on.
Yeah.
And it seems
But
like
when you
that's
don't
getting a
know.
little too common.
Yeah, but when you don't know,
Yeah.
how can you be active when you
Right.
don't know
Yeah.
that it isn't there?
Yeah, you would think we'd have people in positions that would know,
Yeah.
but maybe we don't.
Well,
We don't
even
know.
even the people that were in positions,
Yeah.
they were like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And they start looking, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing that I want to do, which was my first mission, is I've got 2 safety items that I want added to school buses, and I'm going to get a hold of one of the representatives. That's Senator Griffey, or Representative Griffey. I want 2 safety items added. Number 1 is they need a quick release seatbelt, because Dick had to fight this guy still in his seatbelt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because he could not reach back to undo it. And he hated all the school bus drivers hate the seatbelts because they're a booger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting a nice word on it.
Right.
It's a B word, but you know, to get out of that seatbelt. And the other thing I want is a switch or a button on the steering wheel, not on where the mic is over here, because you have to reach over here.
Yeah.
Not on the dashboard here, not over here, but on the steering wheel that can be activated, that sounds an alarm on the outside of the bus that alerts people
Yeah, an SOS.
that something's happening inside of the bus and assistance is needed. Nobody knew that day anything was happening until the back door flew open and the kids started screaming.
Yeah.
And then they saw him jump off the bus. Nobody knew. But if he'd had that button, he could have activated it. Plus, not only activating the siren or the alarm outside, not a siren, because you don't want a
Right.
siren, but an alarm. They would also send an emergency signal to the dispatch office and to the police department with the GPS of where that
That's
bus
not
is
hard
located.
to do. None of those things that you're talking about are hard to do.
But it's getting, you have to go through this certain agency, which I'm like being stonewalled because I can never get the agency's name because they have to give the approval for school bus companies to add these for the manufacturers to add them to the school buses.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm having this roadblock. Anybody that wants to come help me, if you're a senator, representative, you can get my number.
Yeah.
I'm in the phone book.
Yeah, and people can comment on this video too, and we can get them connected with you. We won't be handing out your info.
But that's something that's so simple. But if that change can save another person, the technology's there.
Oh yeah.
And we don't. The research that I did, you don't want OnStar because you have to answer OnStar.
Right.
And he was not in position to answer anything. And if you've got this situation going on,
there's lots of company. Garmin can do it very quickly and easily. They should give. There's even watches that bus drivers should have to have on or something that can give out a SOS.
Yeah. So
monitor.
Well, the scenario that I gave to this one senator and representative that I was talking to is like, okay, you're a bus driver and you're going down the road, and all of a sudden someone yells, "Hey, little Susie's having a hard time breathing. Something's happening with little Susie." Before, the bus driver would have to pull the bus over, get on the radio, okay, tell, and it takes several minutes to do all of that, and then before he can get back to little Susie, to take care of little Susie.
Yeah.
With this, he could hit that button, pull the bus over, park it, and be back there to help that child.
Yeah.
The time in there is minutes that mean life and death.
I bet you we can help you as much as possible get a pathway, but I'm just dreaming it up in my head. And they always say you're only like twice removed from the person you need to talk to.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can network through because I know just from things that I've done, like a Garmin GPS radio that we hunt with.
Yeah.
Like I bought my grandpa one because he's 90, but he just pushes that button 5 times.
Yeah.
it's SOS GPS coordinates are sent.
Yeah, and
It would not be. There's many tools.
But it's getting to this group that you have to go through to get this approval.
There's got to be a way.
And I everything that I get, it's like, well, you have to call so and so, and you have to call so and so, and they keep me in this loop.
Sometimes you might have to knock on their door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I've got to find out where they're at. And that's just it. Nobody will tell me where they're located, so I can go talk to them.
Yeah.
So that's where I need help with that, and
we need to get those internet
mission.
sleuths on it and figure out what. Do you know the name of the agency? It's got to be the bus safety agency or
that's just it. I don't have the name of the agency. They keep saying, well, we have, because I've talked to the manufacturers, and they say, well, you have to get approval from these people. I go, well, who are the people? We need to call. Yeah.
I wonder if it can be put on aftermarket by a school district. I don't know if that would be the way to do it.
I don't know, but you still have to get this approval. So, so I've got that. So that was actually mission number 1, and then this happened, and this one went really fast. So it became 1. So this is mission number 2.
And this one might lead the other one. I mean, it could.
Yeah.
It definitely adds some weight to the situation.
I hope
for
so.
sure.
But if I can get help with that would just thank you, God.
Oh yeah.
But then my third mission, and I was telling you about my protest.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a protester. Well. Talking with my son the other night, and I guess because in the 60s, like I said, with Vietnam and everything, and being a veteran, when I came back, there was protests. I burned a bra. The elastic was gone, but that was okay.
Yeah.
But I worked in helping get it changed so that we could vote at the age of 18. I still had to wait till I was 21. I couldn't vote until I was 21. But yet I had friends who died at 18, 19, 20. Yeah. They never got to vote. And everything, so we worked very hard to get that. So I felt very good that I was part of that. Yeah. And everything, and so, but I'm going to do. I'll go down and get my permit to do a protest.
Yeah.
It'll be a 1-person protest. I'm going to have a sign, and it's going to have a knife on it, and it'll have the circle with the slash. And the only place I can think to do it is in front of the police department. You know. But I will let them know what I'm doing ahead of time. But I know the question is going to be asked, why are you protesting knives? And the response is going to be, why not? Everybody's protesting weapons. This is a weapon. This is a weapon that killed my husband. We can protest. We can make one for cars. We can make one for chairs.
Right.
Anything can be a weapon. We've got to stop protesting the weapons. We've got to start protesting that our laws need to be changed. Our laws have become antiquated and outdated for our society of today. And we've got to get them changed to put more teeth into them, to make people responsible for their actions.
Yeah, I agree.
And people are going to say, well, we have this mental health crisis. Yes, we have a mental health crisis. But we've got to do something about it, and just setting back, well, we have a mental health crisis.
Right.
We've got to get help. Right now, we have Eastern State and we have Western State. There are main 2 mental health facilities for when people are found criminally insane where they're supposed to be housed.
After the fact.
Yeah, after the fact. The thing is, they've also become the clearinghouses for all the people that are claiming temporary insanity or the insanity, and they are becoming inundated and backlogged. And they are becoming a roadblock in our justice system because they have to wait in a queue. It can take them 4 to 5 months, which we have lived through, waiting for him to go, to just get to a bed. And then when they get there, there's another month or 2 before they see the doctor and everything for them to get these evaluations done. And of course, my simple mind of thinking is we need 2 other facilities that are just for doing that. And that way we can have Eastern and Western for the ones who have been convicted as mentally insane or temporarily insane or whatever they're going to be.
Yeah.
And we've got to start getting rid of this stigma that if you have a mental health problem that you're weird or something like that. It's like all of us. Like I told you, if you have something happen to you, if like you break your leg, you go to a doctor and you get it fixed. Same thing. And I admit, I am seeing the top trauma therapist for the state of Washington. I need it because
understandably,
my brain is, I've gone through all the different types of death, but my brain for this is like, okay, what box do we put that in?
Yeah.
And the box keeps moving because of the courts and everything like that. And when you have severe trauma of any kind, you've got to have help in guiding your brain back to where it's supposed to be. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you're insane. It just means you need help in guiding your mind back to where it's supposed to be because it doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. I'm not saying that mine is the same as yours at all. But when my daughter's mom was, she got arrested for her crimes, and it was, of course you plan, it was a big event, and and you keep planning, okay, I'm planning for this date. The trial's going to be here.
Yeah.
And then it gets pushed off, and you spend that time building up.
Yeah.
And getting prepared, and then it goes, and then it feels like, there's something, I don't even know how to explain what it's called. I'm sure there's a fancy word out there in the dictionary, and then there's this sense of, like, for me, it was like, I don't know if it was depression or what it was, confusion or something, but it would take days for me to get back, and then it'd be 3 months later.
It's called the fog.
Yeah, but
there's a fog.
It was crazy.
And when you have a death anyway, you go through a fog. And I have a friend, her husband passed a year ago, and she says, I think I'm finally coming out of my fog. And I said, I'm so glad you are.
Yeah.
She says, how about you? I said, I'm still in mine.
Yeah.
The fog is still there. I'm slowly seeing little glimpses here and there. But until the trial is over, that's like I said, there's moving forward and there's moving on. I have tiny steps of moving forward that I'm doing for myself. I've got to, I've been taking care of myself. Eating and sleeping are still very elusive items, but I'm doing things for me to help get there now.
Good for you.
And, but moving forward will not happen until after this trial because, it's like, it's a reminder every month. Every month, we're reminded of that day.
Yeah.
And that's why the 24th of every month I put out a post. And it's like there's a clock that ticks.
Yeah.
I have a poem on that too.
What is it? You got it written in there?
Yeah.
Let's hear it. What's that? Yeah.
Am I going over time? You need...
We probably the only reason I could visit with you all day. We can do it again. The only thing is because if they get too long, then we have to cut more stuff out, and we don't want to do that.
Okay.
The file size gets too big.
Okay. Well, this was written on September 3rd, 2024. Tick, tick, tick. The clock in my head won't stop. The ticking the ticking becomes. Let me start over. Ticking. Tick, tick, tick. The clock in my head won't stop. The ticking becomes like a drum beat. Ticking, ticking, ticking. It's counting down to the end of another year of your loss, another year of waiting for the trial, another year of being alone. Ticking, ticking, ticking. Each month it ticks down to the 24th. Each month it counts the days that you've been gone. Each month it waits for the time when it can stop. Each month, ticking, ticking, ticking. I wait for the day when my mind knows it's time to let go. I wait for the day when the ticking slows. I wait for the day when the ticking can stop. Ticking, ticking, ticking.
Oh, that's cute. It's sad, but it's a cute, like, simple thing that we think about in life with the clock. Of course, nowadays not very many people get to hear the second hand of a clock.
Yeah.
But it's
I have a clock.
It's a great symbolizing way of.
Yeah, I have a clock in my family room, and you can hear the tick.
Yeah.
And that's what I was listening to the night that I wrote this.
Yeah. That's when you you don't have to answer this, I guess, but
no.
Sometimes I like to pry.
Anything is open.
Okay. Do you give yourself grace? Like, do you have moments where you sit down and are like, that's okay, Nancy? Or are you, because I know you're a fighter, and so there's got to be some pressure there that makes you fight so hard, but do you ever sit back and give yourself grace? Say that's okay?
Do you want me to read you what I have that I do that with?
Yep. You got something.
I've got to rewrite it on my own thing. And this is, because I'm rewriting so I can put it on my fridge. I just want to take a moment to remind you of something truly special. You're stronger than you know. You face every challenge with such courage and determination, and it's truly inspiring to see. Your journey shows how strong you are inside and how beautiful your spirit is, which brings hope to those around you. Never forget the incredible impact you have just by being you. Keep believing in yourself, keep getting forward, and keep shining that light of yours. You're making a difference in ways you may not even realize. Know that I am here cheering you on every step of the way.
Oh, I love that.
And that's what I have to keep reminding myself of.
Yeah.
A friend sent this to me. She says, Nancy, this is what you have to do because this is who you are.
Yeah.
And you keep forgetting that.
Yeah.
And I do. But this has really been with this little steps of moving forward. This is what I've been reading to myself. And everyone tells me I'm impacting, people, and that I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and you see your strength. And of course, I'm on the outside.
Right.
I'm in here. Unless somebody tells me.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to have a little faith with. Even like parenting. You've done parenting. You have you have to believe that what you're doing is going to mature and let these kids grow into great adults, and then return the favor to their kids. Yeah. But I think with something like your story it's so intense that's the way I feel it when you told, when I heard it the first time from Mr. Edwards and then from you telling it, that it can't not impact people. There's just no way. It's one of those life experiences that no matter if you've experienced something similar or you've never experienced it, it's either going to help you feel like you're, that there's other people out there, or it's going to give you some empathy and grace to that person that you might never, you don't know. You might have just walked by them in a store or something and they were grumpy that day. Stories like this is like
smile
maybe,
at people. I love smiling at people and hi, how are you? And like the lady in the grocery store with that was so funny because we were standing and I was looking because they keep moving my milk, and I have no idea why I said it, but she was standing there and she was looking for something else, but I just leaned over and I said, I just can't figure out what did the whipped cream do that it has, or what did the cream do that it has to be whipped? Yeah. But I do stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
My daughter says I'm going to get in trouble someday. But it just it's or I can. One day there was a lady in the store and she just looked sad. And I just, you can just tell. And I just, as I walked by, I said, hey, I just want to let you know that blouse you're wearing looks gorgeous on you. Yeah. And she's like, oh, really? I said, yeah, it looks wonderful. You look great. I said, us women have to boost each other. And she goes, oh, well, thank you. And the rest of the way I saw her in the store, she was smiling. Oh, yeah? And all it takes.
That's all it takes.
My motto is, if you can't be anything else, always be kind. And it takes nothing to do that. Yeah. It costs nothing. And it's so easy to do. A smile doesn't cost anything. Right. And that's like...
Our buddy Flo, she was the first lady we interviewed. Yeah. She was born in England. And her childhood was in the middle of World War II, getting bombed. Oh, yeah. And what did she, you can't even replicate it with her accent. She said the exact You said it thing. Perfect. She says, what does it cost you to smile at somebody? And what'd she say? And it gives you everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You get so much back. I love doing that. It just, that's like, people look at me strange because I have, of course, Winco, I've been going to them since 1982. But I know their names. I know
at Winco?
At Winco.
The ones that keep moving the milk?
Yeah. Well, no, that guy I haven't found yet. But like Sam in the meat department, and and the little gal that's in, I don't know her name, but she was in the deli, and now she's out where the produce is, and it's like, and she has burn scars. Yeah. But I don't see those. I see her, and now she smiles.
Yeah.
and everything. But I'd always smile. Well, how are you doing today?
Yeah.
You know, and I'd see her, and I can remember when I see her badge and everything. But that, you know, it's saying someone's name is such an easy thing to do, and it makes them know that you see them.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference if you see someone, if they know you see them. They, you know, it validates them.
Yeah.
And
Asking somebody what their name is. Isn't that something?
Yeah. It just, yeah. Well, sometimes they, you know, they won't, or their badge will be turned, and I go, so I have to call you handsome dude today because I can't see your name. Oh. And I love doing that because they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's
and
cute.
just, it's such a simple thing to do.
Yeah, good for you.
And I, you know, because I, you know, it's in John, and I can never remember. Anyway, you know, doing, you know, love one another as I love you.
Yeah.
And I always want to treat people like I always wanted to be treated.
Yeah.
And that's what I do.
Good for you. Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah. But I have something else real quick.
Oh, yeah.
A friend sent me this. She says, this is you. She says, I read something today that really changed my perspective, and it really is. You can't skip chapters. That's not how life works. You have to read every line, meet every character. You won't enjoy all of it. Hell, some chapters will make you cry for weeks. Oh, it's okay to say hell.
Oh, yeah.
You will read things you don't want to read. You will have moments when you don't want the pages to end, but you have to keep going. Stories keep the world revolving. Live yours and don't miss out. And I guess that's what I'm doing.
I would agree with that. I should have told you in the beginning that you can say whatever you want on here.
Okay.
Any words. Yeah. I wonder, it might have made a little bit more. I wonder what words we would have slung out.
Well, I try to be nice.
Oh, no, it's great. Yeah, it's funny because we meet all different kinds of characters, so it's kind of fun. I normally, we say, well, you can say whatever you want.
And I'm a character.
Yeah. Oh, we love it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, you've given us so much, and I really appreciate everything, and you being willing to come tell your story.
Yeah.
And I know it's not easy, and I know I'll never forget it. Sitting here with you, it's not a topic really that you want to sit here with somebody with, but it's so important. It's important to understand what other people have gone through, and just to learn about the experience, and I think learn about you and your character. And I hope we get to do this again.
Yeah, anytime, because there's so many other things to tell.
Yeah, and the studio's not going anywhere. But we always ask, if you've already given us so much wisdom, but we always ask towards the end, if you could give the younger generations a piece of advice that has helped you in life, in a way that that you value very strongly, or a core value of yours, that you could share it with us.
Yeah. Well, for me, education, and I say that. I also need to say, not everyone, you need to get education. Not everyone is cut out to go to college. And that's okay, because we still have trades that need people. We have, plumbers, electricians, welders. I mean, all of these trades that we still need. They can invent all the robots they want. You still need humans.
Yeah.
And so, but still you need an education. You've got to know math. You've got to be able to read instructions. Reading and math, believe it or not, go together. And those are two of the most important things for me in everything. But learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
I love
learn
that.
something new, even if it's just a word. And I've taught that to my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids. Learn something new every day. And it can be funny things.
Yeah.
It could be a funny thing. But yeah.
I love that.
And that's what any of the kids that I run into, that we'll be talking, and I go, you gotta go to school. You may not like it. You may not like some subjects. You may like science, but you hate history.
Yeah.
Or you may, so.
It's kind of like when if you're like a mechanic or you work on something, like you gather all these tools over the years, and then someday you go back, clean up your garage or your toolbox,
Yeah.
and you throw the ones out that you don't use.
Yeah.
but you have these good ones sitting there that you continue to use and you hang on to them. And that's kind of life is with knowledge. It's like, go, even like you said, even if you're scared, do that experience, try it, as long as you know it's not life-threatening, too extreme. Yeah. But do things, and you're going to learn something no matter what. And it might help you. It might be something that you throw away in a year or two, and you might never do it again. But
you can try it, and if it doesn't work, you don't have to try it again. But if it works, I mean, I've done this, with the Senate and all this stuff and everything. So my feet are wet. I know that I can do this. It doesn't mean that I'm not scared of it. Yeah. But I know that I can do it. And but I haven't used algebra since 9th grade.
But you're out here writing bills, and maybe that says something about our government. But
well, like I said, I'm writing 4 books, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've got one is How to Become a Widow Because of Murder, and my journey through courtroom number 3 and beyond, and OMG, I made a law.
Oh, that's something.
So
good for you.
And the 4th one's a mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find out later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I know with people that have watched this, I hope that they feel open to comment if they can help you out in any way. Yeah. And cause your mission is so genuine, and it's really unfortunate that you had to go through the experience you did. But I think what you're doing is so encouraging, and I feel like you're carrying the weight of probably a lot of people that will never experience something you did because of the work you're doing, and that speaks volumes about your character.
Well, for me, I just feel there's got to be something good come out of this horrifically bad thing that happened. Yeah. And I know Dick is cheering me on. I know he's probably shaking his head sometimes at some of the things that I do. It's like, what are you doing, honey? No, you don't want it. Okay, you've done it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm doing. Oh God, okay.
Yeah.
But he would champion me.
Yeah.
He would hold his breath sometimes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I love hearing how you admire him and hold him with you still.
Oh yeah, he will always be in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure in many people's.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good for you.
But if any of this, if anything I've been through has touched anybody and helped them, to realize that you can, it's not easy. You have to work at it. And it doesn't mean I don't have days that I just go screw it and I stay in bed and I pull the covers over my head and I've had those days. Yeah. But
you're allowed to have those.
Yeah. And
those are called jamming out days where you're just in your jams all day.
And there's times when I've screamed at God.
Yeah.
There's times when things have happened and I've screamed at him and I go, seriously, you're going to do this now? Yeah. Because it happened here a while back. I had car problems. It's like, seriously, today of all days, you've got this, you've done this, and this. I need a break. I give it all to you as it is. Yeah. And he backed off for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. But I give it all to him every day.
Oh, okay.
I have to, and that's like a friend asked a while back. She says, "How do you do your prayers?" And she asked that in the beginning, and since that day, I have piles when I go to bed. That's when I say my prayer, and I just have this pile of words, and I push the pile out there, and I go, what it's supposed to say.
Yeah.
And that's how I give him my prayers, and until.
Oh, I love that.
And this is how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can pray for dinner. I can pray for different things, but my nighttime prayers for everything that's in me.
Yeah.
That's what I give him is the pile of words, because I still can't put them together.
Yeah.
And I know that may sound strange, but that's what it is.
Life's kind of strange.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And he takes it, and he takes care of it. He knows what I need.
Oh, good.
And if it wasn't for him and family and friends,
right,
and a good therapist.
We continue to say it in here, like we are all just walking each other home. You know, it really takes everybody, and it's something we continue to learn as we do this.
Well,
it's really beautiful.
You're on a train. To me,
Yeah.
you're on a train. And at different stops, people get on and other people get off.
Yeah.
And some get on and off all the time. And we meet people like I'm meeting you now. And you'll be a part of my life now.
Yeah.
And who knows where on the line, I will get off of your train or you'll get off of mine.
Yeah.
And everything. But we're all on a journey. And we all interconnect at one time or another.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
But like tonight, the goosebumps with my dad's story.
Yeah. It's funny how you
Yeah.
learn. Well, it's funny what you learn just like Wayne's been around with me. We've ran around a little bit here.
Yeah.
And it's very common that he and I know the same person. And
Yeah.
I just met
Yeah.
Wayne, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But it'll be like we know him through like his mom, like my mom's neighbor, hours and hours away.
Yeah.
They used to live on a Forest Service camp with his mom.
Yeah.
In Alaska?
In Alaska.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So life's so unique. And you know how you learn those things?
By talking.
Saying hello,
Yeah.
smiling. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it starts, with hello.
My husband laughed because on our when after we became a school bus driver, we had 2 months for vacations,
Oh, yeah.
and we went all over, and we were always, like Dick would say, we were always 170 miles short of 10,000, 2 oil changes and a tire rotation.
Yeah.
And this last trip we were down in we were in Mississippi, and we have our trailer and we stay at the KOAs and the Good Sam's places, and we always ask, where do you go for such and such? And they'd start, well, no, we have those at home. Where do you go? And that's how we'd find Joe's Shrimp Place.
Yeah.
And we'd gone there, and good food. But I loved the Cajun seasoning that they had. I said, where do you get this? Is this homemade? So they told me. So we went to this little store, and I'm in there looking, and this couple came by, and not beautiful black couple, and she was getting stuff, and I'm looking. She says, "What are you looking for, sweetie?" And I told her. She says, "Oh, that's over on this aisle over here." So we follow, and so her and I are talking cooking. And the 2 husbands are following behind.
Yeah.
And we stood there, and come to find out, they were both professors that had been in New Orleans, and they went through Katrina,
Yeah.
lost their homes, and they had gone there to Mississippi, and ended up moving there, and they never went back, to New Orleans, and we stood in the store and talked to them for like half an hour,
Yeah.
and everything, and we did that wherever we went.
Yeah. Good.
So yeah. We met the neatest people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you get to continue to meet a lot of people.
Well, that's what I'm hoping to do. So yeah.
Well, we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you
We're
for
probably
inviting
running out
me.
of memory here. Yeah, we always get to this point. That's a good thing.
Okay.
But we can do it again.
Yes, and just call anytime.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.